I'm Dr. Neil Payne.
And I'm Kirk Lyons, and this is All Things Confederate.
I'd like to introduce H.K. Edgerton, Chairman of the Board of Advisors of the Southern Legal Resource Center. First time he's been on our show.
Don't whip me, Dr. Payne.
So, H.K., what you got on your plate these days?
My plate really actually running over, Kurt D. Even this morning, we were just talking about a principal, and I don't exactly know where the school is located. Some young kids had the Confederate flag in the back of their truck to commemorate the death of one of their students, one of their friends. And the principal said that he had fielded 3 different complaints and that he had suspended the kids because they had that flag out there. That's the flag that symbolizes hate and slavery. My plate just runs over. I've got the monument, the Confederate monument in Reidsville, North Carolina, that a man supposedly fell asleep and drove a quarter of a mile sleep around the corner, up a hill, and into the Confederate monument. You name it, Kurt D, and I've got it on my plate.
Well, we want to do a show on that where you go to Reidsville with Neil and we film that and show that to our viewers.
We want to reenact the path of the...
Yeah, we see how ridiculous their story is on this.
You know, you and Dr. Payne keep me in trouble.
But what I wanted to say about the students that were suspended is this is a problem that we at the Southern Legal Resource Center, as you know, HK, we've seen this for years, and we have tried to build a systematic response as to how these cases are handled. And the first thing I can say to those of you that are watching is that if a case like this happens in your community, really the best response needs to be the local one. And what we find is that in these kind of school cases, there's usually, 3 complaints. If the principal was an honest man and not just trying to take these kids' rights away, he could explain to those people complaining that, look, these kids, we know why they were doing it. They were doing it to honor a fallen student, and that's the only reason. They were not trying to inflame anybody. They were not trying to be disruptive.
And he could explain that, it's our job in the school to teach tolerance of different viewpoints, and these students have a different viewpoint from you. So you just need to learn to tolerate other viewpoints.
Right, and you should be okay with that, right? And they never, ever do this.
No, the tolerance only works one way.
I love you and Dr. Payne because you're talking about what's right. But even Kurt D, being an attorney, you know how these people manipulate Tinker versus Lemoyne, our school district, when they get into the court system. Mm-hmm. We always talk about how the school is supposed to be a place of diverse ideas and supposed to teach history. Yeah. We're in the Southland of America now where our babies can't even fly their own flag. Yeah. And I'm talking about all of our babies, red, yellow, black, and white. This school system was developed and established in 1865, and Northern school teachers sit here to dumb down our babies. The biggest problem for us now is that our Southern family, and I'm relaying this on them, they need to support the Southern Legal Resource Center. They need to support all those champions who fight this thing, this evil that we fight. Our own Southern people are starting to become our very worst enemies. Look at Mimi Elroy in the Shrine City, whose great-great-uncle gave the oath of office to President Davis, and then she turned right around and helped write an ordinance to ban the flag during Lee Jackson Day and Confederate Memorial Day.
And that's in Lexington, Virginia.
Absolutely. And it's like this all over the place. It's very sickening to now see Southern people start to cower down, hold their heads down, and to climb into these in the bed with these people who hate our Southern heritage, and they do.
They do. They hate it.
Mm-hmm.
With a passion.
And HK pointed out something. Yes, the Southern Legal Resource Center wants to be there to help. The only way we can be there is if you become a member. And it costs $35 a year. It's a $35 investment in your liberty and the liberty of your children and grandchildren. It's a bargain. And, of course, if you want to donate extra, we'll accept it. But $35 a year, we'll have information on the screen here as to how you can join. Do so.
And Dr. Payne, it's not just about the flag. The flag is representative of history making a full circle. Mm-hmm. We now talk about taxes too high, bad representation in Congress. These people
bad federal laws.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr.
Need to be nullified.
See what we're talking about, Dr. Payne? People keep thinking that this thing is just about the flag. I'm going to say it just like the Kennedy brothers said it in Louisiana. The South was right. And if these folks don't understand this, they keep thinking all these old rednecks and that Uncle Tom HK fighting for that flag. They don't even understand that we're fighting for America.
Exactly. The real America.
And they got
Real
it wrong.
America,
It's not
yes.
Uncle Tom, it's Uncle HK.
I love you.
right.
Thank you.
That's what my kids call you.
Hey, man. Hey, man. Come on.
It's Uncle HK, not Uncle Tom. Get it right.
Make me feel good around here today. and you know, another thing about it, some guy wrote this thing, the Atlantic, whatever that
Atlantic magazine.
And he said, he made a statement about HK was just like those old Confederate soldiers who came to the Confederate Unions. God bless him for realizing and recognizing the fact that there were black Confederate soldiers. And when he tried to point them out, all they did was came to the reunions with chickens and vaudeville.
Sucking and jiving.
Sucking and jiving. Yeah. You know, I wish he would have ran into Hope Collier and make that statement about sucking and jiving.
Or go down there to Florida and ask
Nelson Wimbush.
Is that what his grandfather did when he went to the reunions with his grandfather?
Well, I'm a little
As a member
of
the Memphis chapter of the United Confederate Veterans.
No.
And we actually, and there were differing attitudes towards the body servants and the reunions, but Louis Napoleon Nelson was a member, colored, of the United Confederate Veteran Camp in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was listed in a newspaper. He's on the charter. He was a voting member of the camp. So, his fellow Confederates considered him worthy of membership, and they are the ones that determine, who a veteran is and who a veteran isn't. The soldiers themselves, and it's always been that way in America. The World War I veterans, they determined who was in and out, and the World War II veterans determined who was in and out as a veteran, and just like the Confederate.
And I love the suggestion he made that because they were impressed into service, that they weren't really soldiers. So all those other white Confederates that were impressed into the Confederate service,
and all those Union soldiers that were drafted,
they weren't soldiers.
And all of those soldiers in World War I and World War II, Korea and Vietnam that were drafted.
Well, you know what, Kurt D. Dr. Payne, I remember a couple of years ago when the United Daughters of the Confederacy in Pulaski, Tennessee, found these graves of black Confederate soldiers, and they wanted to put an iron cross on the grave because I don't want the Veterans Administration to get away either, because I don't like the way they treat black Confederate soldiers. They said there was no such thing, even though the great state of Tennessee had given pensions to these men for being soldiers. It is high time that the United States government recognize, especially the Veterans Administration, recognize the services of black Confederate soldiers. And this is part of the problem. These folks have come here, sent their little northern school teachers here, dumbed down our populace, absolutely totally stripped the black Confederate of all that honor and dignity that he earned. So why would babies not want to cling to something that belonged to them? Because these folks have taken it away from them.
Well, and that's something that the Confederate community needs to learn, and they need to take it into their heart, that probably the two most vitriolic enemies that we face are the Veterans Administration and the National Park Service. They are the ones that are on the front lines fighting us, and most people don't even know it. And that's where our heritage is being stripped away, because they happen to own, the National Park Service owns all the places where our ancestors fought, and they have an inordinate amount of influence on the state parks where our ancestors fought. And of course, the Veterans Administration are the ones that dole out the headstones.
Absolutely.
And control the veteran cemeteries, where we can't even fly the Confederate flag over Confederate graves in a National Veterans Cemetery.
And I do want to mention the irony of Pulaski, Tennessee. The NAACP joined forces with the United Daughters of the Confederacy to mark those graves of those black Confederate soldiers. I was very proud of that. But let me say something else very quickly. The Museum of the Confederacy. What another tragedy here. As long as I've been out here carrying my flag and fighting and battling this thing, I've never heard anything good said about the Museum of the Confederacy. But for them to deny our colors at the Museum of the so-called Confederacy?
Well, HK, we need to hold that thought, because we're going to start on part 2. Stay tuned. We'll be starting part 2 in just a few minutes here. But again, become a member of the Southern Legal Resource Center, a $35 investment in liberty for you, your family, your children, and your grandchildren. Don't let this opportunity go by. We're fighting for you on the front lines. We support HK. HK supports us.
Amen.
And we all work together as family in the Confederate community. And you owe it to your children and grandchildren to be a member. And don't let the membership keep you from making a bigger donation, because we're in a big fight, and it's the fight of liberty.
Let's not forget to mention these last few seconds, we lost Mem, the heart of the Southern Legal Resource Center. I will always never forget them.
We'll start with that, the very first thing. We'll start with section 2.
Okay.
All right.